Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 1, Peace and Conflict Studies, Nature and Scope. Our topic is some approaches to the study of peace, and we shall study about the feminist approach, the political economic approach, the environment approach. The study of arms control and the management and prevention of violent conflict has remained the most traditional area of peace studies. Peace education at its beginning focused on arms race, disarmament, and deadly conflict and war. However, in the past few decades, peace studies have become more directly connected to the activities of many ordinary people who want to change the world. Peace studies today are inclusive of a vast range of approaches and experiments. Many innovative ways of thinking have been developed out of ordinary citizens' endeavors to make the world become a more peaceful place. The first one is feminist approach. The occurrence of both manifest and latent violence against women has emerged as an important concern of peace studies in the last 3 decades. Images of women have been historically associated with pacifism. Feminine values of caring, compassion, and nurturing have enriched the concepts of peace. Moreover, the application of feminine values to the radical transformation of an oppressive social order serves as an important principle in the struggle for achieving peace. Now, let us discuss violence against women. While both women and men are victims of sexism, racism, human rights abuse, and poverty, there are particular types of violence that affect women more than men. Family violence and sexual and emotional abuse of women are major concerns in many parts of the world. Direct violence against women includes rape and unorganized random physical abuse, as well as attacks on women in organized war. It was admitted by the Japanese government in 1992 that during World War II, the Japanese army forced young women from Korea, the Philippines, and other places in Asia to serve Japanese soldiers as so-called comfort women. The rape and deliberate imprisonment of thousands of women, namely Muslims, in Bosnia Herzegovina was a form of ethnic cleansing conducted by Serb nationalists. In many other countries having anti-government insurgencies like Peru, Colombia, and other places, there have been reports of assault on women by the security forces. Yet, most governments failed to condemn or punish those who committed rape and killings. Since time immemorial, structural violence has severely affected women in many impoverished countries. Among the poorest of the poor are young widows and elderly individuals with little capacity to manage household economics. The high level of poverty as well as harsh working conditions have put a particularly heavy burden on female heads of household who do not have adult males to help them. Even in contemporary time, young women provide a hardworking labor force for multinational corporations but are paid low wages. Women in certain regions of the world form the majority of subsistence farmers. In particular, women in Africa produce 80% of the food. However, the introduction of a market oriented economic system deprives women's income by assigning low monetary value to their economic activities. Now, let us discuss gender identities and values. Individuals born into the biological categories of male or female are assigned to the stereotyped social categories of men and women through the acquisition of locally defined attributes of masculinity and femininity. Thus, gender has a lot to do with the social behaviors and characteristics. The construction of masculine or feminine categories is linked to the power relations arising from the practice of attaching meaning to gender identities. Emotion, body, and nature have been historically associated with the identity of female gender. It has been regarded as inferior to the male gender identity characterized by reason and mind. Men are supposed to kill and die on behalf of the state to prove their manhood, while women have to be properly subservient to satisfy the demand of military comprised largely of men. Competitive, organizational, and exclusive masculine values support a model of hierarchical human relationships. These values are often reflected in the bureaucracies of states, churches, corporations, political parties, and the military. State building is a masculine project that encourages a willingness to engage in violence. Men considered as an aggressive biological class are given license for engaging in wars and are motivated to fight. The arms race and other national security priorities are the main factors in the subordination of the women. Social welfare is traded for military spending and it further exacerbates female poverty. Growing entry and success of women in politics and other institutional arena have been enhanced by women's adoption of masculine values as a strategy to be accepted for an authority role. As the Prime Minister of Britain, Margaret Thatcher undermined that advanced social services for women and children. Several prominent women at the highest governmental decision making positions do not remain as peacemakers but as war heroines. Goldsmith won the Six-Day War against the Arabs. Indira Gandhi did not flinch from the waging a war with Pakistan, and Margaret Thatcher sent military forces to reoccupy the Falkland Islands in the dispute with Argentina. The masculinization of women is an attempt to prove that women can perform most tasks reserved for men. This supports the small masculine elite groups who control the institutions and conduct state affairs. But this disables their and society's ability to question the standards and the systems that have long despised feminine values. Recently, professional military careers have become one of the new frontiers open to women. Especially in the United States of America, women have been joining the armed services in unprecedented numbers. They proved an indispensable part of the recent US military operations in various wars. Major feminist organizations in the USA have supported the move for women to be eligible for combat on the grounds of professional equal opportunity. They believe that portraying them as natural peacemakers perpetuates women's subordination. Thus, in order to change their pacifist image, they should participate in the armed forces, and this key arena of control and power should not be left in the hands of men. However, the opponents of a gender greater role for women in the military remind us that women have been victims of militarism. State militaries are organized to maintain the system of inequality. Ironically, thus, women are more likely to be transformed by militarization. Feminist goals can be better achieved through non-violent practices. Next point is shared goals of peace and feminism. Their vulnerability to the structure of violence and deprivation places women in a better position than men to appreciate the values of peace. They have played the role of nurturers, mothers, and natural peacemakers throughout most of the history of human civilization. Feminist thinkers find a logical linkage between the feminism, pacifism, and socialism. By challenging the inevitability of dominant social order and war, the feminine notion of peace elegantly exposes the hierarchical nature of our society. Domination and violence are caused by a hierarchical system, such as military institutions that depend on superior and inferior relationship between certain members. The elimination of violence in both private and public spheres is essential to achieving peace. The goal of the liberalization of women from violence can be promoted by disarmament and the campaign against war. Feminist concepts of peace are extended to the conditions of social justice, economic equality, and ecological balance. Equity and democracy have to be transformational values for forthcoming social changes. Equal relations between men and women can serve as the foundation for equality among all peoples and an end to racism and ecological destruction. The struggle against all types of violence is supported by promotion of women's rights so as to attain an equal distribution of resources and the rights to express oneself freely. Women's access to land, employment, and other resources is an indicator to measure the welfare of a society. Poverty and underdevelopment cannot be overcome in a social structure that generates inequality and violence. In trying to alter power relations, women redefine their roles against their oppressors and raise consciousness of their identity. Social justice and development require the full participation of women. The next point is reconceptualization of security. National security, defined as the defense of sovereignty, is built into the constructions of masculinity. National security reflects the impulse that produces the military dominant structures of organized violence controlled by the state. The history of nuclear weapons developed is an excellent example of a few men exercising power over many. The atomic bomb project is ripe with the images of masculine power and destruction. The public, under the influence of patriarchal military culture, generally accepts the arms race and other national security priorities. In the name of national security, governments are allowed to manufacture and mismanage weapons without public knowledge, as exemplified in testing nuclear weapons on human populations. Feminist values broaden the concept of security by including in it all peoples and all nations based on a notion of kinship extended to the entire human family. Secondly, the conceptual framework aims to embrace a broad holistic definition that advocates the protection of life and enhancement of the quality of life. Thirdly, in the feminist value view, we an adversarial state centric security system negatively affects the conditions for protecting the most fundamental roots of survival embodied in health and a decent quality of life. The military dependent present world security system itself is seen as a major threat to humanity. The high cost of military spending puts a strain on meeting social and economic needs. Feminist security agenda seeks protection from organized state violence and the fulfillment of fundamental needs of human harmony. Here we want to wind up this lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.